You remember parties? I say remember because in many of our cases, not partying quite as much as we used to. We try, but we try. We just can't stay up very late. There's a famous country music song, which some of you who love country music will remember, by Hank Williams Jr. And I forget what it was exactly. The title of the song was, the last line was, "Me and my rowdy friends have rowdied on down." Apparently, he was infamous, well known for his partying. He had a partying reputation, of course. So me and my rowdy friends have partied on down. So yeah, parties are wonderful. I remember parties, and I remember having parties for kids. So as some of you know, we have a lot of kids, and the four boys are all with their birthdays are within 2 months. And in the summertime. So for a year or so, a couple of years there, we just decided, let's just have one party for all those boys. Invited all their friends. So there'd be like 20, 30 kids. And it was a lot of fun. It was, I just remember water fights, just water flying and water guns and a lot of hamburgers and stuff like that, right? Fun times. Parties often stick in your memory. I remember it's the only time I was a high school party of kids, and we went and we did. It was what do you call it? Jiving. We did 50s music because we were 70s kids, but we were retroing into the 50s music, and we had a jiving 50s music party. I remember that quite clearly. So parties are funny. Maybe we don't do them as often because they are a lot of work. Right? There's a lot of work involved. I mean, there's planning, there's preparation, there's energy, there's food prep, there's expense, and then there's cleanup. So it's great. Parties are always great if somebody else is doing them and you just show up and do your thing. And they can be a ton of fun, whether there's games and there's good food and drinks and all this kind of stuff. So they're often a lot of fun, and we have good memories of them, or they can be totally disastrous. And, just sometimes it's because there's too much alcohol imbibed, and people's tongues get loosened, and people get into fights, or people get into word fights and say nasty things, and next thing you know, the whole thing, it can blow up in seconds. So it's a bit of a risky business too. It doesn't matter, we just keep doing them. Human race seems to be a thing that we love to do, and it's common. So I mean, we do them obviously for birthdays and for various celebrations and just for fun, New Year's Eve, all that kind of thing, Christmas parties, staff parties and that kind of stuff. But the biggest party across the board is the wedding reception. And I mean, we may have had parties with our kids, and there may have been 30 or more kids or something, but that's nothing compared to the parties for the weddings, which often would have 100 plus, right? And probably if you think back, the last party for a lot of us that we ever went to was probably somebody's wedding reception. Just wild guess. And this has been the case for like thousands of years. Thousands of years, weddings have been a big deal, and there's been big parties associated with them. I haven't found the statistics, but as far as I can tell, it's a universal thing. Anthropologically, every culture seems to like to do this. Have a wedding, big feast, lots of fun, lots of people involved. So that is the backdrop for today's story that Sue read. The very famous now wedding at Cana in Galilee. So the wedding, Jesus and his disciples got invited to the wedding. It sounds like just about everybody got invited to the wedding. Because Jesus and his disciples, for instance, let's say there's the 12 disciples, maybe some of them had wives and kids, I don't know. So maybe they were there too. It also says Mary and other members of Jesus' family seem to have been there. Maybe they were, we don't know. The place, Cana, is about 15 kilometers from Nazareth, which is where Jesus kind of grew up. So there's probably people connected with the people in this village that would have been there, family members. It would not be surprising that there were if not over 1,000 people there. Like it could well be a big thing, and probably went for days. So a lot of the weddings in the Middle East especially go for quite a while. In fact, Ken Bailey, who I sometimes quote as a kind of an expert in the Middle East, lived there for years and investigated, he went to Egypt and Jordan and Syria and Israel and all these places and just to get the stories and get the feel of the place. And he's brought a lot to our understanding of the New Testament. But he says commonly weddings are like 5 days to a week. So you can imagine in Jesus' day, this is probably the same idea. And it would have been a big party. And one of the things we have to recall and remember is that in their culture, shame is a big deal. You don't want to shame people. So honor, the honor shame culture is huge. So if we can kind of imagine this wedding coming down the pipes from the father who, since the girl was born, probably had that in mind. Okay, I've got a little girl. I got to get her married off, because that's how they thought. And I got to save up because there's two big expenses. There's the wedding and the dowry. So they're saving up for this big day, big wedding, big week or whatever. And it's going to be a sign of respect and of honor throughout their whole neighborhood and their families and all that sort of thing. So So we're connected with some family in India, and we've heard about some of the weddings that they've gone back to there where there's actually thousands of people will show up for a wedding, and it'll go for several days. Pricey. So the father of the bride, they've saved up for this big day, and lo and behold, what happens? They're running out of wine. Now we may think, oh, no big deal. Big deal. Cause for, so if they run out of wine in the middle, say a couple of days into this wedding, and that will be what this guy will be known for the rest of his days. It'll be a mark of eternal shame, basically. So we have a very strange conversation that happens where Mary gets involved with Jesus. It's the only kind of conversation like this we find in the Gospels. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." I hear saying rather pointedly, and possibly almost, they have no more wine. Maybe more like a panic, right? And Jesus says, "Dear woman, why do you involve me? My time has not yet come." He seems to be just brushing her off, doesn't he? To me, that strikes me as this must have been a genuine conversation. Because, as they present Jesus to us, the gospel writers, they want to put him in a good light. And at first blush, this does not put him in a good light. It's like, what's he doing? That sounds kind of rude. Maybe it's just our Western ears. I don't know. It reminds me of I've talked about the story of the Syrophoenician woman who comes to Jesus. She's a Gentile, and she comes to Jesus to cast the demon out of her little daughter. And Jesus at first just says, well, we shouldn't be throwing the children's food to the dogs under the table. She says, "Yeah, but even the dogs eat the crumbs under the table." He says, "Oh, woman, you have great faith." So at first blush, it looks like he's putting her off. He's actually testing her faith. So the next thing Mary says, she doesn't seem to get put off by this at all. She just says, his mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Do whatever he tells you. So it says there's 6 jars there holding about 25 gallons each. That's a big jar. You ever pick up a 25-gallon jar of water? 5-gallon jug is about our max. So 25 gallons, 6 of them. And he says, fill them up to the brim. They fill them up with the brim. Then they take a dipper of it out of, and they take it to the master of the feast, the master of the banquet. And he says, wow, he says, most people, have the good wine at the beginning of the banquet, and they save the cheap stuff for later. But you've done the opposite. Here's the best wine. See, there's 2 things about this. 2 reasons why people save the worst for later. One, it's cheaper, and that's what. And 2, people can't tell the difference, and 3, I guess 3, people don't care. So if they've had a little bit to drink, so But this is quite remarkable. They've kept the best for the last. So basically, people are rejoicing. They go on with this wedding. They're quite impressed with this level of wine. It was not what you call vintage wine, really. What year was it? It's like if somebody offered you, it's 2025 wine. It's like, okay, that's pretty fresh. Yeah. So here's the thing: Jesus saves the day. So this occasion, a party that could have been a total disaster and a huge shame for this family and this man, it is now the most talked about party of all time. It is. Because just about everybody in our culture, whether they know anything about the Bible or not, has heard about water being turned to wine. They don't maybe know where that comes from, the expression, they turned water into wine, but this is where it comes from. So it's quite famous. And Jesus was saving the day for this guy. So a few points about this event, because it's a bit of possibly for many Christians, it's a bit of a head scratcher. One, it doesn't seem very religious. What's he doing, turning water into wine, right? He's helping these guys imbibe alcohol and have a party. And he did. He was. But I think it's presented to us so that to kind of shock us, in a sense, so that we have a better idea who Jesus really is and what his mission is and what he came for to bring to our world. I've told you before about a book I read a bunch of years ago, and some of you have read it, by Bruxy Cavey, called The End of Religion. Bruxy Cavey's a Christian pastor, like an evangelical pastor in Southern Ontario. And the end of religion. And his whole thesis in this book is that Jesus is not a religion. Jesus is truth. Jesus is the answer to human need, period. We may have religious trappings of various kinds, but basically the religions of our world, and the great religion, which would be Judaism, was designed by God to point us, to prepare the world for Jesus, who's the real deal, who eventually came along. So all these things about sacrifice and, the law, which is about, about community life and all that, it's fully blown in the person of Jesus Christ. And the sacrifice, which, zillions of sacrifices of animals in the Old Testament, which never take away sin, that is fully revealed in the person of Jesus crucified, who takes away our sin through his death and through his blood, once for all. There are no more sacrifices need to be done. So, as you go through the Gospel of John, you find that either this kind of end of religion theme keeps carrying, like it really flies in the face of a lot of the traditions of Jesus' day, the religious traditions. So, for instance, Jesus would do all kinds of stuff on the Sabbath that you weren't supposed to do. And he would chitter chat. The next two chapters after this, he's chatting with a Samaritan woman at a well. I'm not sure if we're coming to that. So, which was, that was verboten. Verboten? Yeah. Okay. So there's that. It doesn't seem very religious, and I think that's very deliberate. And Jesus was obviously interested in people enjoying themselves. It's funny how people have got this impression that being a Christian is that's kind of the end of enjoying yourself, or kind of the end of having fun. We should be all kind of pretty uptight. Maybe not so much in our generation, but the previous generation, some of you know whereof I speak. And some of the church traditions were very uptight about all kinds of things. Like, you can't play cards, no dancing, no movies for you, all that kind of culture. That's not a very good representation of Jesus and what he came to do, which is to bring fullness into our lives. I came that you might have life and have it more abundantly, says Jesus. Right? He didn't come to suppress us and make us, judgmental, uptight hypocrites. So, you know what I'm saying? I think you do. So in fact, in my heart and my belief is that Jesus came to set us free and to put so much joy in our hearts that, it's normal for us to be celebrating and enjoying ourselves. Okay? So 2, in this passage, this thing that Jesus does is actually marking him out as the Messiah. Surprisingly, maybe, But so the people of Jesus' day had, they had a whole tradition and a whole idea of what the Messianic age would be, the age when the Messiah comes and, changes things. One of the signs of it would be this kind of thing. So if we go back to Isaiah 25, which they would know, basically they didn't have Bibles in hand. We really didn't get those much till Gutenberg's printing press back in the 1400s or early 1500s. So everybody listened at synagogue, and basically many of them memorized the scriptures. Isaiah 25, for instance, was a big messianic passage. On this mountain, the Lord Almighty will prepare a feast of rich food for all peoples. Okay. A banquet of aged wine, the best of meats, and the finest of wines. The finest of wines. Now, does that sort of kind of get an echo of that in this passage in the Gospel of John? I think it does. So, so Jesus he doesn't go around and say, I'm the Messiah, look, come to me. He does signs and this kind of thing that are indicators, if you knew what you're to look for, that he is indeed the promised Messiah. And it says, at the end of it says, he thus revealed his glory and his disciples put their faith in him. This is the first sign he does. It's recorded in the Gospel of John. So here's the point. Why do people party? Why do we like parties? Why is it such a big deal? I mean, there's a whole party culture that's around us. People that party. It's a way of building community, which we are community-minded, creatures. We are social creatures. We need other people. Some more than others, I'll admit. And we talk a lot about this in my house, but some seem to be more extroverted and some more introverted, and the introverts seem to not care for the parties as much as the extroverts. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. Maybe so. But we all do need friendship. We need community. We need others. We're designed that way. So that's part of it. And a party is a way of meeting people, of getting to know people better, to enjoy people's company. And it's a way of celebrating, which is also an important need for humans. We need to celebrate, kind of mark things in life, special events, people graduate, people have birthdays, people get married, all this kind of thing. I went to University of Toronto. My first year was a shock because of the party culture. Oh my goodness. Because I came from Minden, as you know, and it was pretty quiet life, relatively speaking. Suddenly I'm in a men's residence at the University of Toronto in downtown Toronto. The lecture halls would have like 300 people in them and stuff. So I was like, what? I was always like overwhelmed. But the culture of a lot of the Toronto area GTA guys was very party. So they like to celebrate, and they didn't take much. They would go to a movie and they would celebrate the movie. They started about Wednesday because that was hump day. Hump day! And they would crack out some beers. And then, Thursday, well, it's almost the weekend, so that's reason to party. Then it was Friday, well, it is the weekend. Saturday, we don't have to do anything till Monday, and on it went. Maybe they'd slow down a little bit on Sunday, and they maybe cool their heels Monday and Tuesday. So basically 4 or 5 days of the week were party. And I was just like, what? And I don't know how they passed. And some of them excelled and became lawyers and doctors and things. It's still beyond me. But people like to celebrate. And part of it is people looking for an escape, right? To get away from the cares and the worries and the responsibilities of life. And, we do need to do that in some ways. So, we need to have a time of refreshment and a holy time, a Sabbath away from the pressures of life. So that's there too. And all these things are actually our interests as Christians as well. We're all about building community, right? Building friendships, getting to know each other, if you go through the New Testament, I've talked about this before, there's so many places where it says, one another, love one another, be generous to one another, be kind be forgiving towards one another. One another's, I forget, I once printed up a list of the one another's. I think there was 30 or 40 of them in the New Testament. So, we're about community, we're about celebration. Basically worship is celebration. When we worship, we're celebrating the goodness of God. When we're telling God we love you because we are fearfully and wonderfully made, and so is all of this creation. And in addition to that, you've redeemed us by the blood of your Son, Jesus. We've got a lot to celebrate about, more than anybody. So, and we can escape as well, because it's about freedom. That's the other thing. People are partying; they're trying to have this sense of freedom. In Christ, we have escaped and we've been set free. We've escaped from sin and its power. We've escaped from its guilt. We've escaped from its shame. We've escaped from fear. We've escaped from fear of death. And we've been set free. For freedom, Christ has set us free. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. So where Christians living in the Spirit are together, there really normally will be a lot of joy going around, a lot of sense of liberty. Just saying. Plus, just saying, we're also kind of keen about things like food and good drink and music and dancing and all that kind of stuff. So we should definitely party more. We don't have to excessively imbibe alcohol and drugs and stuff like that to have a party. That is not requisite for good partying. Good partying is mainly just enjoying each other's company, great conversations, good food, maybe some games, maybe some music, all that kind of stuff, which helps us to mix together and get to know each other. It's a way of meeting our neighbors. It's a way of making friends. It's a way of building relationships. So we should throw more parties. Just saying. Now, not all of us, because that's not everybody's gift. I think it's a gift. Next week, I think I'm going to be talking about the giftings of the Spirit. And some have the gift of hospitality. Some of you do. I don't think I do, but I'm happy to come to the party. I won't name people, but I know some people who just, they got it in them. They just love doing it. And it's a ton of work, but they're just great at drawing people together around a meal or an occasion of some sort. So they're a lot of work, but it's a way of blessing people and of sharing our joy. So we are on a mission to spread the good news of Jesus' love, his sacrifice, his deep compassion for us, and his healing power. And I really think that parties have a part to play in that mission, however they may look. Jesus is trying to tell us something, I think, by his behavior at the wedding in Cana of Galilee.